This film contains stories that some viewers may find difficult. Support is available Australia-wide through Lifeline on 13 11 14 or QLife LGBTQIA+ on 1800 184 527.
What Parents Want, talking about gender and sexuality diversity in schools. In Part 2, School Encounters, parents talk about their child's school experiences. Parents share the real stories about their gender and sexuality diverse child's interactions and experiences at school.
Geordie went into Year 7 maybe a little naively. So in Year 7, she was quite open about sexuality. She had trust in her peers and so was engaging in that kind of talk in the same way that all the kids were engaging in that talk. What I think shocked her was how people, her peer group, responded. So in the first instance, she was called names, particularly by the boys in Year 7, because she just went into that whole year trusting. I mean, she's just a kid. And she didn't really think, I have to protect myself or I have to be careful about how I speak about myself. I think she wandered into that space expecting it all to be okay, and it wasn't. And that set up this low-level bullying, I suppose, and excluding because she was this different kid. That escalated over time. And so it's the subtle stuff of not being invited to parties and not being asked to do group assignments and not engaging with her at lunchtimes. Things like that.
It was very problematic for the school. They were not ready. So we saw a paediatrician and the paediatrician had said to Meg, you just be whoever you want to be. I had to actually do my own background work to be able to protect her in her transition. So I went through the education legal bulletins and worked out what I was able to protect her with and what I could educate the principal on, because she'd never heard of gender dysphoria, which my child was diagnosed with. The first 2 terms, the teacher had no idea about gender dysphoria. So the kindergarten teacher, I was updating her constantly, and I felt like I was doing the work, all of the work, actually, to protect my child. So educating the teacher, telling her, because they just had no idea what to do. There were no policies. They had no idea how to educate the rest of the school, the teachers, the kids in the classroom. At Meg's older brother's school, there's a big mural. They're very gay and very proud. In the secondary school, it's very proactive. In primary, absolutely nothing. It's too scary. There are no books. I think the teachers in kindergarten tried to put in a book about a panda who didn't know who he was, and there were parents complaining about that. There's nothing visual at all. There's nothing. There's no support groups. It's not talked about. It's almost like, well, Meg's teacher said to me in a meeting, I avoid talking about transgender stuff. I avoid gender dysphoria. I avoid anything to do with gender or the LGBTQ community because that is not my role. It is not my role to teach that. It is not my role in the school to teach other children about that. It's got nothing to do with me. I think that's probably indicative of a lot of teachers. It's not their role to teach gender stuff. That's the parents and the doctors. It's got nothing to do with them. So avoiding the topic at all costs is paramount.
Asha was bullied a lot in Year 7. The school did a whole gender thing in Year 7 actually, and they had masculine traits and feminine traits in columns. And somebody else in the classroom said, "Asha, you're right there in the middle." He was sort of read as slightly gender non-conforming for want of a better description, but only slightly. And as a result, he was a target for one kid in particular. It lasted 6 months. And in the end, I went to the deputy's office and I said, "I have done everything I can. There's nothing else I can do." And he said, "Yeah, that kid comes from an incredibly conservative background and Asha is clearly from a very progressive background. You couldn't get two more opposed kids." He said, "If he's not doing well socially, we'll just change his class." And he moved him out of that class on the spot. The fact that the school considers social well-being to be absolutely intertwined with education is critical. If you're not happy socially, if you're not confident in your belonging, in your sense of belonging, you can't learn. If you're constantly on the defensive, how do you engage academically? Asha's had issues. He's had times when things socially weren't working terribly well and that kind of stuff. But there's never been a sense that he didn't belong at that school.
Emma did eventually get to stand up and talk about how she identified. And they read the I Am Jazz book, which was one from our personal library that she'd taken into school. They read it in Emma's class and the two other classes that were from her year group. They also read it in Marnie's, her older siblings' class, because Marnie had said that the kids there knew Emma as a boy and she was quite worried that they wouldn't understand or accept what was going on. She didn't want to be teased or have to explain it to every single person. The school was reluctant to put out transgender education to all the students, so it was really just Emma's year group, which was year 3 at the time, and Marnie's, which was year 5 at the time. I guess people talk, so it just evolved. I did not have a single parent have a go. It was universally accepted and wonderful comments from everybody. Great, really great.
Geordie sought out a peer group in high school who was more akin to her, if you like. So her group is young people who are exploring their sexuality. A couple of her friends are trans, identify as trans. A couple identify as homosexual or lesbian. So the whole group, well, they've kind of found each other. This is a group of kids who are identifying quite diversely. The school itself does have a support club, and that's on a Friday. It's very popular. However, Geordie is suffering with a lot of anxiety through feelings of exclusion, wider feelings of exclusion. So we're going through a whole process of psychiatry at the moment and antidepressants, because even though there is this group, the wider impacts of the school, which is very heteronormative and cisgender, is actually having quite a negative impact on her. Rather than the school doing any kind of adjusting or addressing, it's been, let's counsel Geordie, rather than the school doing anything different. The outcome of that has been for Geordie to go see the school counsellor and then adjust her student timetable. So last year, she only got half her grades. So she's a bright kid and she's being, well, it's this process of reducing rather than addressing the issues.
Despite the bullying, Ash has actually had a really good experience at school. When he started high school, his year advisor was also the rainbow advisor for the school. And when we met him on enrolment day, he complimented Ash's blue hair, apologised for the fact that his was black at the moment and said, "Don't worry, it will be purple again soon." And like Wear It Purple Day was the biggest event of the year. It was huge. It was like a really big deal. And they had awards for the best dress. They made videos of it and kids did cartwheels and dancing. It was just incredibly celebratory and not serious. I think that that's been the biggest takeaway for me that I wouldn't have thought about before, was just making it fun.
I don't think a lot of the teachers are aware of the impact of the little tiny daily things that the school does. For example, even the enrolment form. I know even last year, Meg still had trouble when she logged onto the computer system because they set that up in kindergarten when they enroll. They set the login with her birth name. Every time she has a casual or a different teacher, her name pops up as Rory. So last time that happened, she walked out of the classroom and went. She just went to her safe space. It was too much and too overwhelming for her to see her name up on the computer in front of everyone as Rory. Again, I think it's just a systematic. There's nothing in place for schools to understand what's going on for these kids. Also, the peer social thing is really important. So when she feels like she's being laughed at or identified, the emotional impact on her is overwhelming. She doesn't know what to do with it. So the last term of school, she started self-harming at school in front of the kids. She's 8. She's in year 3.
There was a child who transitioned in year 6 at River School. It was just handled so beautifully by the school. Like, it was just the most perfect thing. They took all the kids in her year and had a separate talk with them and just talked about what was going to happen. Like, the child would come to school and she was going to have a different name and we're all going to try and use her new name. Sometimes we might make mistakes, but that's okay because we just apologise and move on. Like, everything was handled so beautifully. I know with that there were lots of discussions about gender. That was when River was in year 5 in a composite class of 5, 6. So they got all the 5, 6 kids together, that's right, and explained what was going to happen with the child coming to school with a different name and in a girl's uniform and all that kind of thing.
In January, we wrote an email to the Anglican school that our child Bridget was going to, and we said, this is the story. Our child is transgender and she wants to come back to school as a girl. The first thing they said was, they've never had a transgender kid at the school, which obviously can't be true, given that 1.3 or 1.5% of all young people these days identify as transgender. But that was their view. We don't have the resources and facilities, particularly bathrooms or change rooms, to accommodate her, which is also a false and ridiculous idea. She just wanted to use the girls' ones. Then they said, and in addition, we think it will be necessary for us to write a letter to the entire school telling the parents that we've got a transgender kid at the school. And as a consequence, there's a good chance that your daughter and your son will be bullied at school. I got off the phone and talked to my husband. We were very, very upset. Because in a way for us, it was a kind of predictor about some of the discrimination that she might face in the world. You know, the informal, implicit kind of discrimination involved. It wasn't like, oh, well, your daughter's going to be expelled, we're not having her. It was just that they were doing everything that they could to convince us that we should take her out. Because the unspoken fact was she was going to be. They would make her feel unwelcome in the school. We didn't know what to do. We were really, really struggling. And she'd only been out for a few months and she was, of course, struggling. So we sent an email to the school saying, fine, we'll just take the child out of the school. And that was in January, in the first week of January. And she didn't have a school to go to. It was massive for us.
As my daughter Geordie built her identity of herself, she also learnt how to trust or not trust the space. You know, how trustworthy it was or how dangerous it was for her. That was where the shutting down I think, started to occur. So whenever I've gone up to see the school, and I've done that from year 7 and year 8, I've always said to Geordie, do you want me to talk about your sexuality? And she's like, yeah, that's fine. And I'm like, because I think we probably need to talk to the teachers about this, because I think it's actually part of the factor of peer harassment. We've had the conversation, and I've said to the teachers, I need you to watch out for this not being a reason for the bullying or exclusion or these microaggressions. I've been very clear with the teachers that they need to know who Geordie is as a student and what my expectations are, that she should still have a safe and full education. There would be acknowledgement, certainly on the part of the teachers, but the reality was there's nothing. The answer is, well, we have this LGBTIQA club on a Friday. They don't do things like wear it purple day. They don't do that. They do let students wear small rainbows for Pride Month, but that's about it. So it's really peripheral. When I've asked for stuff, they've kind of voiced an indication of support, but it's just not embedded in the school.
River decided that we would go and speak to the year advisor, who's really lovely, and I was confident. I had talked to him earlier in the year. He was amazing and had thought of every conceivable question and had answers to everything, like, what toilets do you want to use? You can use the disabled toilets. What about after PE when you need to get changed? You can use those toilets there. You don't have to use the change rooms. What uniform do you want to wear? Do you want me to talk to other teachers about it? Are any of the teachers splitting the class into boys and girls for lesson things? Just an amazing list of questions. He then made sure that their report card was gender neutral. He spoke to all the staff members at the school. He said it was easier to just talk to all the teachers rather than just the teachers that had River, because they're all going to have them at some point. So it's easier to just start off, tell everyone. A few of the teachers actually came and apologised to River because they had done class activities that involved splitting the class into boys and girls, and they realised now that's not okay and they're not going to do that anymore, which was really just so kind of them to acknowledge that they'd done that. A few teachers have made some, misgendered them and just apologised and moved on, and it's not been a big deal.
Teachers at Meg's school are doing what they can. So next year, Meg's teacher is going to have a theme of rainbow through her class to try and... They're just doing the best they can with what limited information they have. The school does try and help Meg. They had a whole school dance musical with a rainbow theme. Meg was on stage for the first time in a ballerina outfit. She was so happy. So I think schools are doing what they can. They're trying really hard to... I know Meg's teachers, they are aware that every decision they make will impact on Meg's mental health. Even if it's in 10, 15, 20 years, that's a big call. That's a really big call for a teacher to make.
There are a couple of incidents where the boys had been climbing over the cubicle because Emma wouldn't pee at the urinal and standing up in front of everybody. She didn't want to have to go in there anymore because these kids were climbing over saying, "What have you got? You got a big willy going on in there or something." So she'd come home and do a giant wee, and then she'd be fine. That was happening on a fairly irregular basis, so she was missing quite a bit of school because she couldn't pass urine and was getting stomach aches and things from holding on. So the school, I guess, were becoming more and more aware that this was a problem, because I'd talked to them about the toilet issue and other things like getting changed in a classroom as they did for swimming lessons. She wouldn't do that. So I said to them, can we get her into the toilets and get her changed there? Emma had said she wanted to go to the girls' toilets, and the school were a little reluctant initially. But I said that that was a law, that if a person identified as that gender, then they were to go to that toilet. And I pointed out that it was more inappropriate for her to be going to a urinal with boys when she's a girl. that in a girls' toilet, all the cubicles have doors. There's toilet etiquette. You go into a toilet, you close the door, you come out, you wash your hands and you leave. So when we discussed that, they became okay with it. Yeah, they told the boys about the toilet etiquette, and they also let the parents know that there had been this incident. So they individually spoke to each parent. Then the boys apologised to Emma and she accepted that that was okay. But from then on, she went to the unisex toilets, which is what they renamed the disabled toilets as. They actually took the sign off and put up unisex.
So we went around networking as much as we could and asked people about a particular school. We sold our house and we moved because you have to be in the catchment area to go to that school. We rented a house and we got Bridget into a school a week after school started in January. And at first it went okay. The school has diversity as one of their slogans and they committed to making it work. But very soon she started being bullied, like really, really seriously. So for example, there were some kids that lived near us. We were renting, Year 9 boys, and they were following her around the school, flicking up her skirt. Then when she was walking home from school, they'd come past on their bikes and they'd push her over. Even when they were running athletics, they would form a circle around her and just jostle and push her. Even in the corridor, they would shout across the corridor. And yeah, I was reporting this to the school, but they weren't able to do anything. So Bridget was actually becoming terrified, and she wouldn't go to school. And I was trying to work, but I was having to drop her off at the time the bell rang and fetch her when the bell rang. And when I spoke to the school, they just said, well, look, if your daughter will come and point to the pictures of all the relevant kids and we will deal with it. But she wouldn't do that because she was too afraid to do that because the kids live near us, like 50 metres away. And they used to walk past our house every day to and from school. So, yeah, eventually I just gave up and I said, okay, well, we're going to look elsewhere. But anyway, now in the most recent school Bridget goes to, she goes to karaoke club and the deputy principal goes along and he sings with her and karaoke and so on. And when I spoke to him about it and I said, oh, thanks for doing that, it's really cool. And he said, no, I know. I need to show the other kids this is a good kid and we're with her and we support her. So they very consciously show the extra support to the trans kids so that other kids know that. The teachers know that the child is trans and that they're on her side. Like they're with her, they're looking out for her. And it's been a very significant thing for her, that he likes her and that he does this with her. She's not aware, obviously, of why, but, they make a special effort to align themselves with vulnerable kids. And I think that's necessary in schools,